Look, if you genuinely believe the dawn of the Red Bull Ford era was going to be a walk in the park, Melbourne just delivered a brutal punch to the gut on the very first day of school. The atmosphere here in the paddock is thick with pure, unadulterated tension right now. While every single pair of eyes was glued to those brand new power units, Max Verstappen decided to test the limits of the gravel traps at turn 10, and the aftermath was nothing short of a total nightmare. The Red Bull 22 limped back to the garage looking like it had been chewed up and spat out by an industrial meat grinder, and the damage is not just cosmetic. We are talking about a massive hit to the stopwatch that could define the entire weekend. The technical chatter behind the scenes is incredibly grim, because the floor on these ground effect cars is the absolute beating heart of their aerodynamic performance. When Max went airborne into the pebbles, the entire Venturi effect of that Red Bull 22 was essentially neutralized. We witnessed carbon fiber shards flying through the air like confetti, which is a death sentence for the downforce levels required for high-speed stability. Chief Engineer Paul Monahan tried to maintain his "everything is under control" corporate face, but he admitted the wreckage is significant enough to keep the entire crew occupied all night long. Translating that from strategic speak, the mechanics are going to be pulling a desperate all-nighter fueled by energy drinks just to try and resurrect that chassis before the sun comes up. And while Red Bull was literally picking up the pieces, Oscar Piastri decided today was the day to put on a masterclass for the ages. The McLaren kid absolutely humiliated the entire field, becoming one of the very few drivers to break the barrier of 80 seconds. Seeing the three-time world champion down in 6th position, trailing by more than 0.6 of a second behind a local boy, and even sitting behind Kimi Antonelli, who is practically still in diapers in Formula One terms, is a savage reality check for the Milton Keynes squad. Max was visibly fighting the car, struggling with a balance that looked incredibly nervous and unpredictable during mid-corner rotation. That heavy thump in the gravel might be masking much deeper suspension geometry issues or damage to the energy deployment system that the telemetry teams are still scrambling to decipher. The million-dollar question echoing through the hospitality units tonight is simple. Is Red Bull merely sandbagging to hide their true hand? Or is the technical hole they have dug for themselves much deeper than they are letting on? Monahan praised the new in-house engine, calling it fantastic and robust. But the actual race pace and battery harvest today remains a total and complete mystery to everyone. While Isaac Hadjar is over there just trying to find his bearings and stay on the asphalt, Max is the one doing the heavy lifting for the team. And seeing the Dutchman make such a glaring, unforced error proves the Red Bull 22 might be a temperamental diva. If the suspension cannot handle the curbs of Albert Park without upsetting the entire aerodynamic platform, then Red Bull is in for a very long and painful season. Will they manage to find a magic setup fix overnight, or are we witnessing the first cracks in a once-invincible dynasty? The pressure from Ford is immense, and failing to perform on such a global stage is simply not an option for this partnership. What do you think? Is this just a minor hiccup or the beginning of the end for Max's dominance? If you thought Red Bull's disastrous trip to the gravel was the only headache in Melbourne, you better buckle up, because George Russell just turned Mercedes' afternoon into a full-blown day of fury within the legal halls of the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile. What was supposed to be a routine practice session spiraled into a festival of frantic explanations and technical scrutiny. It is like watching that star pupil who is the teacher's favorite, but somehow keeps getting into major trouble during recess. George Russell, who actually serves as a director for the Grand Prix Drivers Association, had to climb the stairs to the steward's office not once, but 2 separate times today. The governing body finally laid down the law regarding George's bizarre mistake during the practice start procedure. The British driver completely disregarded the designated area specified in item 14.1 of the race director's notes and decided to launch his car wherever he felt like it. The excuse he offered? Sun glare. He actually claimed that the solar haze prevented him from seeing the grid markings properly. Look, in all my years covering the Formula One paddock, hearing a driver of this elite caliber missing his marks because of the sun is, to say the least, highly suspicious and incredibly curious. This is a grave technical and safety concern because he parked his machine beyond the protection of the pit wall. By stopping there, he was exposed to other cars coming off the final corner at speeds exceeding 180 miles per hour. While he escaped a heavy grid penalty and walked away with just a formal warning, the message from the Federation was crystal clear. The officials had already warned every single team about the rigorous enforcement of these instructions before the session started. It was a classic slap on the wrist, intended to keep the weekend from descending into total chaos. But the frantic energy at Albert Park did not stop there. While Russell was busy trying to justify his positioning, Franco Colapinto, now representing Alpine, nearly sent Lewis Hamilton straight into the concrete wall. Lewis was on a flying lap, pushing the limits of his tire temperature and energy deployment, while Colapinto was essentially cruising right on the racing line. This kind of lack of awareness is a recipe for a massive high-speed accident. These unforced errors from Russell, combined with a previous reprimand he received for a pit lane collision with Arvid Lindblad, suggest a Mercedes squad operating under immense, invisible pressure. They are desperately hunting for every single millimeter of aerodynamic advantage, yet they are tripping over the absolute basics of track operations. On the team radio, the tone is anxious, showing they know they cannot afford to waste a single second of track time. Will this frantic pace and lack of focus cost them dearly during the qualifying session tomorrow? Or is the Mercedes car simply becoming a diva that is too difficult to handle under pressure? If you thought Red Bull was having a rough time sweeping up carbon fiber shards from the gravel, or that George Russell was the only one struggling with the glare of the Australian sun, you need to pay close attention. Aston Martin has just plunged into a level of sheer desperation that I have rarely witnessed in this paddock. You know that sinking feeling when you go to turn on a device only to realize you have absolutely no batteries left? Now, I want you to imagine that exact nightmare, but instead of a remote control, it is a $15 million Formula One masterpiece sitting dead in the garage. Fernando Alonso did not manage to complete a single solitary lap during the opening practice session today, and the underlying reason is enough to keep any lead race engineer awake for a week straight. The team is quite literally running out of vital components to survive the rest of the weekend. The brand new Honda power unit, known technically as the Romeo Alpha 626 Hotel, arrived here in Melbourne behaving less like a precision instrument and more like a violently unbalanced washing machine. We are hearing that the internal vibrations within this power unit are so savage that they are destroying internal components through pure mechanical resonance. During free practice 1, Lance Stroll only managed to survive for 3 laps before the entire system was forced into a protective safety mode. The specialist engineers at the Honda Racing Corporation back in Sakura have been working frantically against the clock to transmit digital countermeasures across the globe. They are desperately trying to recalibrate the energy delivery from the battery pack just to stop the chassis from vibrating itself into a million tiny pieces right there on the asphalt. It is a digital war for survival, and right now, the car is losing the battle against its own internal physics. The logistical situation is even more terrifying behind the scenes. Aston Martin shipped exactly 4 battery units to Australia for this event. However, upon opening the crates, they made a catastrophic discovery. 2 of those units are suffering from critical communication protocols. Essentially, the car's central software cannot talk to the energy cells. That leaves them with just 2 functioning batteries for the entire race weekend, exactly 1 for each car. There is absolutely no plan B remaining. If Fernando Alonso or Lance Stroll suffers even a minor electrical glitch during free practice 3 or the high-stakes qualifying session tomorrow, their weekend is effectively finished before the lights even go out. Team principal Mike Crack looks like a man who has not closed his eyes in 3 full days, admitting that the exhausted faces in the garage are a direct reflection of the massive technical hole they have dug for themselves. The team had to make a brutal decision before the Fédération Internationale de l'Automobile curfew kicked in tonight. Do they intentionally sacrifice raw performance and electrical energy deployment just to ensure those remaining batteries survive until the checkered flag on Sunday? If they dial back the power to suppress those lethal vibrations, Alonso becomes a sitting duck on the high-speed straights, easily overtaken by cars that should be behind him. If they decide to run at maximum capacity, the risk of a total electrical blackout or a complete mechanical failure is astronomical. Is Aston Martin witnessing the end of their competitive cycle, or can the genius of Fernando Alonso overcome a car that is literally trying to tear itself apart? If you honestly believe that the madness in Melbourne was limited to Max Verstappen's shattered carbon fiber floor, or George Russell's questionable excuses about the sun, you need to sit down, because the situation at Ferrari is far more explosive. The atmosphere in the paddock has turned incredibly heavy. Lewis Hamilton, at 41 years of age and absolutely starving for that record-breaking 8th world title, appears to be reaching his breaking point with what he perceives as organizational amateurism within the Scuderia. The situation boiled over during Free Practice 1 and Free Practice 2. Lewis was absolutely flying on track, clocking in the second fastest time of the day. But the communication with Carlo Santi, the stopgap race engineer, was a total and complete disaster. Santi, who famously worked with Kimi Räikkönen in the past, was frantically trying to explain a loss of lap time by citing power deployment limits. Hamilton, with the surgical precision of a 7-time world champion, shut him down with a blunt rebuttal. "That does not help me, man. Is it apex speed or exit speed?" For those of you who have not been following the behind-the-scenes drama, Ferrari committed what many are calling a cardinal sin. They removed Riccardo Adami, who was Lewis's right-hand man last year, and reassigned him to the driver academy. The consequence? Hamilton is currently racing with an interim engineer while he waits for Cedric Michel Grosjean to make the jump from McLaren. Lewis himself has already stated publicly that this reshuffling is detrimental to their championship campaign this season. Just try to visualize the technical challenge here. Imagine piloting a Ferrari at over 205 miles per hour, utilizing a revolutionary active rear wing that rotates 270 degrees. A piece of technical sorcery that provides an extra 6 miles per hour of straight-line speed. But having absolutely nobody in your ear who speaks your technical language. It is the equivalent of having a rocket-powered engine paired with a completely broken global positioning system. You have the power, but you have no direction. Despite the palpable tension in the garage, Ferrari's race pace is genuinely terrifying for the rest of the grid. The car is undeniably fast, and their brand new aerodynamic system has left the engineers at Mercedes and Red Bull visibly shaken. Lewis even took to social media to post that he forgot who he was for a moment, but that the real Lewis is now back. However, a warning remains. In the world of Formula One, if the fine-tuning between the driver and the engineer does not exist, raw talent alone will not win you the race. Hamilton is clearly motivated and looking to prove that the disappointing 7th-place finish of 2025 was nothing more than a temporary system error. However, this live televised argument shows that the Ferrari management still has a massive amount of human resource spaghetti to untangle if they want to be serious title contenders. If they cannot fix the pit wall communication, all that aerodynamic innovation will go to waste when the pressure peaks during the Sunday Grand Prix. What do you think about Lewis's blunt reaction? Was he right to demand perfection from his team, or was he being way too aggressive with an interim engineer who is just trying to fill a gap? Drop your thoughts in the comments section below, and make sure to subscribe to the channel so you do not miss a single chapter of this Melbourne soap opera. Your interaction is vital for us to keep bringing this high-level analysis to you.